Three, two, one.
All right. Welcome, everyone, to the Crow community meeting. As was suggested just before the recording started, friendly reminder to please be respectful and polite and have respectful disagreements if disagreements do come up, which I suspect they probably won't unless we get into some design conversations today. Also, a reminder, I think there was some confusion last week about the cadence of this call. It runs every 2 weeks, so it was not on last week, and it was cancelled the week before that due to KubeCon. So this is our first community meeting in 4 weeks, I think. So every second week. Okay, and welcome to anyone else who hasn't been here before. I think everyone here has joined the call before, but if you haven't and you'd like to introduce yourself, please go ahead now. I think you can raise your hand in the Zoom if you want to talk. But otherwise, it looks like we can get on with the regular topics. Okay, Amin, do you want to do the milestone review and then we can get into a feature discussion? It looks like milestone review is the first recurring topic here.
Yes, sure. So our next milestone for Crow is 0.3. And uh, let me see if I can share my screen for this one. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Could you zoom
So,
in just a little bit, Amin, please?
yeah, absolutely. How's this? Maybe more? Okay, sweet. So typically for milestone review, we just like check where we are with the PRs and if we have like everything, if all the GitHub issues like have PRs against them, and if there's anything that needs code reviews. So I'll go one-on-one on those real quick. So the first one, we have a PR for about it. It's about like, hey, properly computing the deltas for secrets and config maps. That one is made by Barney. Um, I think we need reviews in there, and I believe that Barney just like pinged me yesterday about it, so that's on my plate. The other one is detecting CRD breaking changes. I have a PR for this one. I don't know why it's not linked here. That's my bad. But we will. I think I was needing reviews on this one, but it's been a long time I didn't check it, so I'm gonna have to check that after the meeting. For propagating RGA labels to manage resources, I believe Ash has a PR on this, which is like pending, and I think Rebase also like just need reviews. And the most important one, which is external references, again like there's a PR opened by Barney. Scott and Matthew. I think Barney just like pinged us again yesterday, and we definitely like need to jump in and try to like finish up the conversation about this topic and get it merged. I personally like don't have any objections about it or like big nits about it. I just like the main topic that I've heard in the past is that maybe we could use an Excel CRD to deal with external references or read-only resources. I believe, Scott, that was your idea regarding this. So we can definitely like continue that conversation in the PR. The last topic on the milestone is the Argo CD tracking via annotations or labels. I think I was wrong about this one when I opened the GitHub issue. It is not possible to track resources labels or annotations. Sorry, with annotations or labels. You do it only with owner references. However, like since Crow supports cross namespace and cluster scopes plus namespace resources, owner references like makes it problematic for us to continue having that support. So like overall, I don't think we're gonna make 0.3 next week, but we can definitely like aim for the next community meeting if folks want to iterate on this like really, really fast. We can like have it released in 2 weeks from now. Yes, Walter, I can see you raised hand.
Sorry, I'm in a rabbit hole for a minute. What was the issue we were trying to deal with Argo CD tracking via annotations or labels? Can we get like a 2-minute synopsis?
Yeah, so Argo CD to track everything on the dashboard. Let me see if I have a maybe an image in here. Yeah, I think something like this makes a lot of sense. So let me do this. So you can see here like they have like these resources that are like linked to their parent resource in here. I don't know if visible or I need to zoom in. But you can see like they have, for example, a lot of resources that are like healthy and they're all like they'll have those nice green parts next to them. In order to have this kind of graph in Argo, you will have to set owner references on all your resources. That's how Argo actually understands how resources are related to each other. And without owner references, sorry?
It's not true that Argo doesn't use owner references because they don't allow for garbage collection in this direction. This graph gets created by a convention internal to Argo around labels and the owner of that, but it's not an owner ref, it's a label and a convention. And then they have this bidirectional cache that drives this UI, so you can look it up and it's quick to realize what thing owns what. And then when a change comes in for a particular resource, they understand using that bidirectional cache graph thing, which thing to stick into the work queue to do work.
So like without setting owner references, you can achieve what's like shown in this dashboard in here.
Yeah, but it's with a custom cache and effort. It's not Kubernetes magic.
Okay, I see. Because like the information I'm coming with is coming from conversations in this GitHub issue and some people that are using Argo CD. I've been told like you need owner references to make it work. Okay.
Yeah. Before we get into the details, can I step back one bit? Is this bug? It says support Argo CD, but in fact, is it really trying to say support Argo CD type or style tracking, not actual Argo CD tracking?
So the main ask in this GitHub issue is that people wanted to see Crow instance child resources in their Crow dashboard.
Yeah.
I don't think it will like change anything specific to how we do everything in Crow, rather than propagating the proper.
I thought we were building a feature for Argo CD, which had me worried. But what I'm hearing is that we're building a feature similar to something that Argo CD has, which has me much less worried.
So yeah, I don't think it's even a feature that's similar to it. It's mainly about labeling the resources correctly. And if we're missing like owner references, which I thought that was the case, then we should add them. But we're not doing anything like Argo specific in here.
I'm also not an expert in exactly how Argo does this, but I mean, I'm just looking at the docs here, and they do seem to have some annotation and label combination that they use to do this. I guess an interesting question here, though, is like if we actually want to achieve this and make it work out of the box, does that mean that we're putting labels like Argo CD dot whatever on our resources, or are we building a mechanism where users can put those labels somehow? Like, you understand the difference? One is we're writing the Argo magic, and the other is we've given people the ability to have the Argo stuff written, but we're not doing it for them.
Sorry, I'm going to interrupt, Justin. Matt, when you say that, can I see if I can change what you said and you'd be okay with it? We don't mean Argo CD dot. For us, it would be crow dot, right?
Well, that's actually my question. Like, does Argo
Okay.
work with any arbitrary resource like label, or is there a specific magical Argo CD dot label and or annotation that it needs to show up in this graph? And if the feature we're asking about is we want this Argo CD, graph to work, and it's some internal proprietary Argo mechanism that builds this, bidirectional cache that was being talked about. If it only works with the Argo label, then I think, yeah, I have some question or concern about us writing that label. Like that's a little hinky to me versus us giving the users the ability to write any label that they like that would achieve this. Like one of them is generic and could work for other things. One of them is Argo specific.
So where this might not work with Argo right now is, especially when we're using, if you're comparing like Crow to Helm in the Argo space, if you make an Argo resource that's like an application and it's based on a Helm chart, Argo actually does a dry run of that resource and then collects everything that it's going to create and then diffs that with the cluster and calculates what the patch is. And then before it actually applies the resources, it adds in these special Argo tracking labels that give context on where it came from and which version of the Argo application that gets applied. And so then everything that goes into the cluster has these Argo labels, and then you can use owner refs past that because Argo doesn't touch the resource. I think where they bump into trouble is that because there is no dry run of the Argo or the Crow resource, once it gets to the cluster, they can still do the append piece because it's just like a resource they're applying, and they're always going to mutate the outbound thing. But they would have to then use owner references past the Crow resource to be able to get that graph, if that makes sense.
Scott, are you saying Argo can follow owner references, or?
They can, yeah, but the normal mechanism, like the top level resource from Argo applications to everything that application created is through these annotations, and then past that is owner references. But because you can't, specifically Argo doesn't make the Argo application own the resources that come out of the Helm chart so that you can delete the application and nothing gets cleaned up. Where Crow is similar to the application, except it gets funny because if you use Argo and Crow together, they would be combined. Well, you would then use Argo and a Helm chart to make a Crow resource, and then their owner references past that. I'm actually not totally sure what the problem is. I have to look at the bug.
I also wanted to mention, thank you for that. I also wanted to mention, like, one of the things I have also been working on is like a better prune in kubectl. And as part of that, we defined basically a bunch of labels and annotations that sure look a lot like, what Argo has done. So I think from that, like I think we could propagate labels. I think we should figure out how we're going to do pruning. I think we can have multiple labels because they are labels. And maybe we could also look at maybe Argo would like to support or recognize these standard labels. Now, I say standard, but they are like, alpha feature gated in kubectl super experimental code. But, maybe there's a path to making them, hopefully there's a path to making them better. I don't want to, pretend they are something they are not today. They are like, super experimental type things.
Maybe this is like a generic Crow feature rather than so this idea that you have your Crow instance of the graph thingy, and there's a block of labels and annotations you want to apply to all of the next generation of resources. And right now you don't know that ahead of time, and there's no saved reference of what those labels are going to be because they might not be exactly the instance of the Crow resource. Maybe I'm not totally sure because it's probably based on the generation of that thing too, or the version or whatnot, so that you can kind of trace where things have gone and what's been updated.
I agree with that. I think I do think we need something in Crow to solve the pruning ownership problem. I know there's some debate about whether we want to prune, but I do think we want to at least support pruning because owner refs don't work across namespaces. Important completion. I think everyone has converged on labels and/or annotations, at least in conjunction with owner refs. So maybe we should discuss pruning alongside this issue. I will take a look at the issue and see if we can link in the pruning discussion.
One minor other point is that I think there are like FYI resources in Crow already where I can make a template and it points to another thing in another namespace that says like, I don't really want to create that thing, but I want to pull a spec field out of it and then use it to decorate some internal template. And it would be neat to be able to go and add in an annotation to that reference so that we can add it to the graph so that you can realize it. Or maybe it's in the status of the template resource. I'm not sure, but that's a feature in Argo that does not exist, that you can get that annealing piece, which might set Crow apart.
And my understanding is Argo is actually pretty open to contributions. So if we wanted to add that, reference hint functionality to Argo, they would probably not be opposed to a PR. They might not do the work, but they would be not opposed to a PR type thing.
I have a question. Crow today does not propagate labels, and we have this this issue tracked on the side called propagate instance labels to manage resources. And one of the reasons why we had this one, or actually we wanted to make it opt-in, so you have to set an annotation that propagates all asks Crow to propagate all the labels. And one of the reasons why we wanted this was to have Argo support. I don't think we should ever do anything Argo specific. Only enable some sort of features like this one, and users are responsible of configuring Crow resources correctly in order to achieve what they want. So my question is, do we still need this? Since we can do owner references, should we just close this in here? I don't think it's really relevant to have Argo support.
Yeah, as far as I'm concerned, these are the same thing, right? Except that the Argo CD needs annotation and labels.
I think there's one minor clarification that needs to happen where so take Kubernetes deployments. You propagate labels by putting metadata in the template. Now, a lot of times, I'm kind of a fan of propagating all the labels down to the children, but there are cases where that's not the right choice, and you actually need to opt into specific labels and annotations that you propagate down. Does the template today support metadata in Crow? I don't remember.
By template, you mean cell references? Can they reference labels? The answer is yes.
Okay. Yeah. Then I think if I can reference a label from the instance of the RGD into the children of the RGD template, then it should work out. The propagate everything, it seems like a good idea, but then it turns out probably not a good idea all the time.
I would agree with you, Scott, on this. Because basically, especially for Argo uses this label to say that this object is a root object. It's an object deployed by Argo. And then you enter the problem where it's actually Crow that deployed it, but Argo, if you have a prune, then it will try to prune, and then Crow will try to deploy again, and infinite loop, right? So this is probably not the best implementation.
Yeah, that's a really good point because there wouldn't be an Argo application that owns the resource inside of the Helm dry run piece, and so the graph cache Argo engine thing internally wouldn't be able to associate the resource back to a reconcilable thing.
Hey, I mean, like on that, the issue that you're talking about, like the first issue on the list, is that talking about like propagating all the metadata, like, annotations, labels into all the sub-resources? Or are you just talking about the instance only?
Only labels from the instance to the managed resources.
Oh, I see. Okay, yeah, in that case, it's different. I think they're different between the supporting Argo CD and this one.
I just quickly wanted to mention, I actually think that propagating down all annotations labels is problematic. And the example I will give is the managed by. I think Argo CD, config sync, Flux all have a concept of a managed by annotation. And I think we specifically do not want to replicate that down to subsidiary objects.
All right, that makes sense to me. I think we should probably remove those two GitHub issues from this milestone. I see so many concerns around this, so I don't want to block 0.3 regarding just for this feature. It's definitely something we can continue discussing, and if there's a better implementation or mechanics to implement, then we should do those. Scott, to your question on everybody else, I think what you asked about, hey, can we do something like this? And the answer is yes. So you can literally copy the instance labels directly to the child resource by just doing a cell expression. And even if you can filter them, for example, you can be like, hey, I only want labels that start with, I don't know, like crow.run, for example, that have this prefix. Or you can just negate that and be like, I don't want you to propagate the crow labels. So
And how would I add another one here?
So
I want all of the parent plus 2 wacky new ones.
Yeah, that's precisely what I would like to have as well. And I tried and I didn't manage.
So that's how we get Helm templating into Crow. No, just kidding. That's gonna be a little bit tricky. So there are two ways of doing this. It's either you do something like this and then you have another function that you call and then you inject your labels. Sorry, I'm not typing well today. It's happening. Append. I don't know. I'm just imagining maybe a function that can let you inject more labels, or you can imagine maybe merge if you have another map that you can literally merge this with. But it's not really as simple as in Helm charts. You could literally just write your own labels and reference other ones and just would work because it's an interpreted language. Unfortunately, in Cell, we don't have a lot of options in here. So basically, you can either do this or do you create your labels and then it's going to be AB. And then you can also use cell in here. You can have your custom label value in here, but there isn't such a mechanism to inject directly let's say this expression in here. This is not something possible it's not only not possible in Cell, it's not possible in YAML.
Yeah. So I think this is actually the feature that we're looking for, right? To have a merge style to inherit, to add, to extend some labels. That would be one.
On that note, I'm kind of surprised that isn't in Cell. But I guess the meta question is, if we wanted to introduce a function, I believe we can introduce functions, right? Like we just have to sort of hard code them and bake them into Crow. Do we have a way to do that without like locking it into the Crow API for eternity and old time, right? Like, do we feel that we could introduce the merge function with very limited discussion in 0.3 and then sort of iterate? Or do we feel that if we introduce the merge function that we are locking ourselves in, right?
I personally don't think that we're gonna lock ourselves in any shape or form. Like we're still in alpha, it's still very experimental. I'm very happy like to break those kind of things as long as we put them in the changelog and it's a minor bump. We communicate that with the users. I think we should be fine with breaking things and moving fast in order to achieve what we need. But I don't think because if we're on this merge function now and tomorrow we don't feel like it was a good call, we should like stay stuck with it.
I like that approach as well. I think we should do our bestest, but not commit to, if we were to remove the merge function, we would do it as part of like, here's the better way to do it. But like, I don't think we should just arbitrarily remove the merge function because we decide we don't like it and leave people sort of stranded. But if we can't do that, then we can't do that.
So if I can play devil's advocate for a minute on this one, I'm going to suggest that, and I think I know the workaround, but I'm going to suggest that you're right. We can do it right now, but we're also trying to get to a stable release. And everything you say goes out the window, I believe, once we hit stable. And so I worry that if we make a decision like this now, we put it in, we forget about it, that we hit stable and suddenly we're like, oh, whoops, we did this thinking that we could change it later. Later has come, but we're just past stable and now we can't. So I like move fast. I like the rest of it, but I would say maybe one of the things we want to do with things that we're a little unsure of is put them in a document somewhere that is the stable blockers. And basically before we go to stable, we review that document and make sure that we are still happy with all the move fast stuff we did along the way.
Will it come in a feature flag? Beta or alpha feature flag?
Yeah, absolutely. We can do feature flags.
I was going to say, do we have feature flags yet?
No, we don't have that concept at all. You know, like everything is a feature flag in Crow. We could remove it tomorrow. Crow is a feature flag. It's no, we don't have it, but I think it's a good idea. If we don't feel like comfortable introducing something, yeah, I think maybe we can gate it for now and be like, hey, this feature specifically is alpha, and even if Crow graduates to GA tomorrow, the feature is still alpha. So that's your issue is still using it. Sorry, Nicholas, I didn't see your raised hand. Go ahead.
I was just thinking about one thing that we probably need to think about is owner references are great for the controllers to be able to understand what to re-reconcile on changes downstream. But in terms of kubectl ask a question, it's really impossible to filter by owner ref. And so having both is, I think Argo leaned in well, owner ref is difficult for kubectl to use, and so we're going all in on labels and annotations. But we may need both for just the ergonomics of trying to find what the heck this thing has been making.
Yeah, I totally agree, Scott. And I'm actually just trying to find the link to the KEP where we like basically discuss these problems from like for kubectl apply prune. Like owner refs are great for garbage collection, automatic garbage collection, but yeah, you can't query on them. And so I think that's why everyone does labels and annotations also, right? Also, you can't control the garbage collection. So it's automatic, and which means it's going to happen, and you can't, if you don't like it, tough.
Well, you can turn off the garbage collection with non-controlling owners. There's a setting there. I think the most important thing about owner refs is that it becomes much more, you don't have to build that bidirectional cache that Argo does to be able to figure out why, when something downstream changes, what are you gonna re-reconcile upstream? because you have the key and the value there.
Yeah, the other nice thing about labels is you can filter watches on labels, but you can't filter on owner refs, sadly. It would be nice if you could, but you can't. And so I think I think that it's both, right, is the right answer or the best answer today.
One fact that Argo does not filter on labels. Their watches are global.
It is interesting. Like once you have 10 in Argo's defense, once you have 10 applications, right? Is it better to have 10 watches each filtered by label, or is it better to have 10 watches or one watch and do it yourself? But it depends, right? Depends on the object, and I can see why they made the decision they did. I actually wanted to mention. Sorry, go on.
You can also block the garbage collector with the finalizers, right? So even if you have the controller, if you need to garbage collect something before the resource is deleted, you put a finalizer. That's why they're there for.
Agreed. The problem is once the object goes deleted, you cannot undelete it, which is really, really annoying. So I think this is, look, I'll try to find the cap where I talk about some of this stuff, but actually I think a lot of it was actually just a discussion at a KubeCon. And so I don't know how much of it made it into the cap, but yeah, it's the answer seems to be that owner refs are great, but they are not enough. And I think that's why everyone did labels. Here's the cap. The thing I wanted to mention on the functions and compatibility was, I don't think we need it yet because we are in alpha, but like some form of like generation or version of the standard library, right? And you could opt into it at the template level, right? And maybe this is a good way to say, all right, so we implement merge today, and next year we discover, the syntax when you have identical keys should be the other way around, whatever that means, right? And like, how would we ever change that sort of thing, right? That's the sort of thing where we could say, like, I want v1.2025 or whatever we want to version it, right? Something of that nature. But I agree that like while we are in alpha, everything effectively gets the alpha YOLO version, and we should not worry about it too much. But maybe we can sort of start to have like some sort of opt-in in the resource group definition as a field to say, like, I want to use this particular version of the runtime or whatever it is.
That's such an interesting question because, you could use the version of the CRD itself, but that's not going to be consistent across clusters. And so, yeah, like how do you version these things? You'd have to do it by hand and trust the user to say what it is, but then the template could be breaking. Very interesting.
I want to say something like just to wrap up the conversation. A lot of people ask me like, hey, why don't we have owner references and other things in Crow? And I think in this conversation I was hearing all the reasons why I didn't want to use them at all in Crow. Crow today doesn't use owner references at all for many reasons, and one of them is like the ones that got mentioned in this meeting. Crow only uses finalizers. It's a custom deletion mechanism. There is a DAG when it's creating all the resources. It respects the DAG when it's deleting all the resources, something like another reason why we can't use owner references in this specific area. But I think this deserves like probably a much more deeper conversation about how we handle deletions overall and pruning and garbage collection and everything in Crow. Sweet. So if just to wrap up, I think number 184 and 170, we're gonna remove them from this milestone. Not abandoning them, we just like need to talk about them more. So hopefully I'll see more about this on the GitHub. And yes. I think that's it for the milestone review. We spent 45 minutes on milestone review, but it was very productive, so I'm very happy with it.
Yeah, I think that also covers the feature discussions as well, since we discussed a lot of features in depth.
Yeah.
Cool. I think the only other item on the agenda is just general news. It looks like someone added in the New Stack podcast that Jesse and I did. That was a lot of fun at KubeCon. The other thing from KubeCon that I'll advertise is Walter and Justin's talk on how we're using LLMs to build many Kubernetes controllers, which is relevant if you use Crow with tools like KCC or ACK under the hood. So check that out if that's of interest to you.
Actually, I watched it and I already have a thumb up on it. That was like probably like the first video I watched when the videos got released.
Nice.
Yeah, definitely an interesting one. I'm adding it here to the Justin and Walter.
Walter, your hands up.
Yeah, I just wanted to quickly mention, this is a very targeted message of people who've already heard it, but I don't mind other people hearing it. While this was KCC, the tooling for this is somewhat KCC specific, it is in open source. And I wanted a quick reminder to Jesse and Bridget that I think we'd already discussed. I think the problem that Justin and I are trying to solve here for KCC is a problem that exists in ACK and ASO. Every cloud has a fighting curse against rest is time consuming. And so, you know, Justin and I believe and would like to work with the ACK and ASO folks to actually have them try to also use the same tooling and see if we can make the tooling more generally useful for everyone. And so, and you know, I have a feeling that if we can get that working, we're going to find other cases, including possibly some direct Crow cases where it will be useful. So I'm just going to throw that pitch out there.
Yeah, sounds good. I'll definitely point it out to Matthew. He had to drop, but
Cool. Scott, you are yelling about the logo in the chat. Yeah, I think we kind of have a default decision on the logo. We're going with the emo crow. But I'm not sure we've publicized that, and it hasn't appeared in the repo yet.
I don't know what the emo crow is.
Oh, I don't think people have seen the emo crow. Oh God.
Oh, did Jesse not post it in the GitHub issues?
Oh, do we have it? Okay, that's cool.
I'm not sure. Maybe it's not in the GitHub. It was made by Jesse, and is, yeah, it's an emo crow. That's the best description of it.
Yeah, we don't have it here. Let me actually drop it.
Maybe just put it in the README.
Directly? Hey, thank you for all the suggestions.
Yeah, I mean, we have
GitHub lets us edit to put an icon on the org too. So that is possible.
Oh, cool.
And yes, go ahead, Nick.
No, I was done.
So I'm gonna drop here this one here just for people can see it. Maybe a little big for a little bit, and I'll open a PR. But Scott, this is the logo. It looks more of a t-shirt logo than like a tech project logo, but I still love it.
All right, we're gonna make some resources and slay some vampires.
Yeah, that is the vibe for sure. I'm not opposed to it.
I think it looks cool because it looks to me like a single lucky brushstroke, and it sort of reminds me of like painting resources on your cluster with beautiful artistic precision.
Just makes me want to go listen to the soundtrack from the movie The Crow. Like excellent 90s goth kid music.
Yeah, I think the only other thing we need that was requested in this issue is the icons, which we still have not figured out. Does anyone want to take
Yeah,
that
I've
on?
never found that useful. All projects try to make their own icon for their resource, but it's never actually what you want to talk about.
Yeah, it's mostly requested from some like pre-sales teams who just want to put it in their PowerPoint decks.
Yeah, Christina, who published these, is works in the sales organization, and she's building a lot of decks and diagrams with what people can do with Crow, and she suggested these. I'm not really opinionated in here. I don't use icons, and I like more Scott's camp. But yeah, I think logo and icons is like two different things. For sure, we can decide on the logo, and then we can deal with the icons.
Yeah, maybe for now we just tell Christina to use the ones that she suggested.
Yeah. And you can see like the RGB one is a bird. You can see like it's like
Cool. I think that's all the topics for today. Did anyone have anything else?
Go ahead, Walter. Sorry.
Yeah, so sorry, Amin, if I'm cutting you. I actually had I wanted to have a quick discussion about triage under the open discussions. So one, thank you, Amin. I think Amin set up a triage meeting for Friday. So I want to kind of mention like that is a good thing. I care because I have gotten one or two complaints that PRs have been languishing without getting reviewed. Now, I'm not sure whose fault it is, and I don't really want to blame default anyway, but I will say that I think maybe we need a README or a set of instructions on how one gets their PRs reviewed. I mean, one of the observations I made when it was brought up to me yesterday is that the individual in question had assigned or had put a bunch of people on the reviewers list, but hadn't actually assigned anyone. Every group, every repo seems to have their own way of doing this, but my first guess is, hey, maybe you should just try putting people as actually assigning people. This also then gets to should people be assigning them themselves, or should the triage meeting do this? But I think this is sort of an open question we have right now around how one should get people review it, how we make sure the right people are reviewing it. I think there's a bit of a process hole there right now.
Walter, I agree. Like, definitely we need to improve the process on how we get into PRs. I think as of today, we have 29 open PRs, and it's really like hard to keep track of everything that is going on. At some point, we had 50, so my job was like to just like close as many as possible. And most of the PRs that be in touch, they're either like building, like having a lot of code, or like building big features that I could not really deal with real quick. So it's not it's not like forgotten. We're just like gonna get into it very soon. And I've seen like actually yesterday for the first time I received notifications for PRs being assigned to me. So like those are in like they will show up in my pull requests assigned.
Yeah, that's why I thought it might be good to just say, why don't you just try directly assigning them, and then we can talk about this in the community meeting, and we can determine how we want to handle this. But let's start moving forward. So, I mean, your point about large PRs and more featured things, I think, is great. It's one of the reasons why I think maybe the triage may be the better way to do it, where we just say, look, we're going to triage every week, and we're going to maybe the triage meeting, gets volunteers or assigns people to actually do the reviews. But if we're going to keep moving forward, we can't just have people write PRs and then have them languish. We actually need either code to land, or we should start capturing why a particular feature or a particular implementation is problematic, right? People shouldn't be sitting there waiting and just feeling like they're being ignored.
Absolutely. I agree with you. So I know, like I sent the invite for the Crow mailing list, and I think it's fine for the meeting to be public. So I'm gonna drop a message as well in the Slack channel, to see if like other contributors that have PRs or interested into working on other areas to join the call as well. So that's something I'm gonna like take care of.
Cool. Were there any other topics?
What's the state of the roadmap document? I mean,
I'm working on it, and I'm hoping to get something by mid next week, not even earlier than that. I'm capturing all the conversations that we had around Crow, and I'll share it with the community as soon as possible. But for now, I don't have it ready at all.
okay.
I've started something. It's not a document, it's just a list of features that I believe we need before claiming that Crow is production ready. So, I mean, I've shared that with you and the maintainers as a GitHub project.
The only reason I bring it up is that that might help direct what gets attention with the open PRs.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Okay, this is really cool. Thank you, Nick. I just saw this right now. I'll take a look.
I only just put it together, so you haven't missed it. And this was based on feedback from Google Cloud customers saying we need these features before we can run Crow in production.
Bridget puts in open issue first. I think that's a good idea. Like when I'm I'm midway through trying to add this new conditions, and I added an issue and I wrote a short document to describe what the heck I'm doing. So there's context.
Yeah, and I appreciate when you do that, and I feel like that's the right way to go. I think sometimes people who want to contribute to an open source project, and the first thing they do is roll up with a bunch of code and drop in a PR and say, these people are mean meanies and they don't take my PRs. It's like, well, I mean, probably you should at least, if for anything other than an insignificant, minor thing, probably at least an issue. I'm not saying full blown cap, but if you don't open an issue to discuss the giant PR you plan on dropping, I kind of am not very sympathetic with, it might not get reviewed instantly or it might not make it in because you didn't talk to anyone. And so that's kind of the bar. And if we are not communicating that adequately, I think we should communicate. Please open an issue for discussion before you drop a giant PR and then sit there wondering why it hasn't been merged. I feel like that's a pretty reasonable bar.
Yeah. I mean, you probably have to document at least 4x what you code, not counting tests, right? Like,
I mean, just say why, what's motivating this and what do you think it's solving? So people don't
Yeah.
have to look at your code and try to guess. Walter?
I mean, I agree, but I'm going to agree in a very strange way. And the strange way I'm going to agree is I'm going to say, I don't want caps. And I think that not having this process leads to things like caps because you sort of go from nothing to, oh my God, we've got too many people trying to make too many large changes. We need to do an overblown process. So I would rather build the right small process and see how long we can make that last without having to go to something like a cap.
I think open an issue first is the smallest process that I would find acceptable.
Yeah, and I think we should probably even have the concept of, maybe we look at it in a triage meeting or something, but when people open things, we may even want to have a way to flag it as, please come talk to us in a community meeting before you proceed on this.
A simple mechanism could be you make an issue and then reviewers are going to prioritize things that are in the next release that are issues and assigned. And so you can kind of filter based on PRs that have issues that are in the next milestone. It's not saying that that's the only thing that gets reviewed, but it's definitely the thing that gets priority. the reason I went through the trouble of writing that little one pager is just to show a process, right? Like it's a sort of complicated. Where's the justification here? I wrote the document. I'm doing the work. So cool. All right. See ya.
All right.
Yeah, we have time. So let's wrap up.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks, everyone. I think we can stop the recording, Amin. And I'll see
Thank
you all in
you.
2 weeks.
All right. Thank you all. Take care.
Bye.
Bye.